Billionaire CEO. Fired 7 nannies in 2 months until she told his sons, "Now you clean." Before we dive in, I want to know, where in the world are you watching from right now? Type your city in the comments so we can see just how far this story reaches. And when we get to the end, I dare you to rate it from 0 to 10 because this one might just break your heart. Now, enjoy the story. 7 nannies had fled this mansion in less than 2 months, each one defeated by the same 2 boys. The twin sons of a billionaire CEO, 2 children who hadn't smiled once since the day their mother passed away. That morning, sunlight spilled through the tall glass windows, casting a golden glow across the marble floors. But beyond the living room doors, it was a battlefield. Splashes of red, blue, and yellow paint scarred the polished wood like open wounds. Toys lay scattered everywhere, a minefield waiting for the next unlucky soul. And then she appeared, Ariel Carter. Her heels clicked steadily against the chaos as she set her bag down with calm precision. From behind the staircase, 2 little heads peeked out, eyes gleaming with the mischief of hunters awaiting their prey. They were ready for her to break, just like all the others had. But instead, Ariel met their shadows with a steady gaze, her voice calm, but edged with quiet authority. "If you make the mess, now you clean it. I'll help." No yelling, no threats. Just a simple sentence that shifted the air in the entire house. No one knew it yet, but in this world of power and loss, those words were about to change everything. This house had once been full of laughter, but since the day Catherine Whitmore was gone, every wall, every hallway had fallen silent. So silent, you could hear the tick of the grandfather clock echoing through the air. The Whitmore estate home of billionaire CEO Nathan Whitmore was a masterpiece of elegance. Gleaming hardwood floors, sweeping marble staircases, chandeliers that caught the light like stars. But now, the only sounds were the low murmur of a television left on for noise, and the echo of solitary footsteps. Nathan, 38 years old, head of Whitmore Industries, moved through the grand foyer with the presence of a man who could command a boardroom, yet felt powerless in his own home. His eyes caught on his twin boys, Liam and Lucas, both just 8 years old, sitting far apart on the same sofa. The space between them felt wider than the room itself. Then the door opened, and Ariel Carter stepped inside. 29, the new housekeeper, warm brown skin, steady eyes that spoke of someone who had weathered storms most people couldn't imagine. Nathan introduced her with a voice stripped of expectation. "This is Ariel. She'll be with us for a while." No reply, only the golden chandelier light spilling between them, revealing the invisible distance that kept this family apart. Have you ever stepped inside a home so beautiful, yet felt the emptiness pull at you? Share your thoughts, because sometimes silence is the loudest cry a family can make. Part 1, the first day. The battlefield. Charleston greeted Ariel that morning with sunlight as golden as honey. But the moment the 3-meter-high iron gate swung open, the gravel driveway leading to the Whitmore estate seemed to breathe a different kind of air cold. Still and tight, like the surface of a lake before a storm. The black SUV rolled forward slowly, tires crunching against the gravel in the pale morning light. Seated in the back, Ariel kept her hands neatly folded over her bag. She'd worked in many homes before, but never had she felt such an odd mix of grandeur and unwelcoming silence. The front door opened. Nathan Whitmore stood there, charcoal gray suit, black tie, every movement sharp, precise, the kind of presence that could close multi-million-dollar deals. But his eyes, cool, faintly sunken, didn't belong to a man celebrating a victory. "Ms. Carter." His voice was deep, clipped, Ariel nodded, offering a small, polite smile. This house, my boys, will need time, he said, not as a greeting, but as a warning. They stepped into the grand foyer, where the high ceiling and crystal chandelier cast light across gleaming marble floors. The scent of polished wood from the spiral staircase mixed with a faint trace of old lavender, an unmistakable remnant of the woman who once kept this place in order. When Nathan pushed open the living room doors, Ariel immediately understood why 7 nannies had walked out before her. The room, vast enough to host a small gala, looked like the aftermath of a paint explosion. Red, blue, and yellow streaks stained the polished wood like open wounds. Lego bricks, toy soldiers, and stuffed animals littered the floor, mingling with crumbs from half-eaten cookies. The white designer sofa bore a pale purple smear. A remote control car lay overturned, one wheel still spinning lazily. Nathan said nothing, no reprimand, no sigh. Ariel set her bag down, unbuttoned her coat, and scanned the room. She saw them 2 curly-haired boys with bright but guarded eyes, peeking from behind the staircase, like seasoned spectators waiting for the scene to unfold. She walked forward slowly, letting the sharp sound of her heels tap against the floor. Reaching the center of the room, she bent to pick up a single Lego block, turning it in her hand as though it were a small treasure. Then she looked directly toward the stairwell shadows. If you make the mess, now you clean it. I'll help. Silence. Nathan's brow creased, bracing for the usual protests, but none came. Instead, Liam, the older twin, stepped out, arms crossed, eyes a mix of challenge and curiosity. You're not mad? Ariel tilted her head. Mad? Why would I be? You've got a lot of energy. I respect that. Lucas, the younger, narrowed his eyes, searching for the hidden trap in her words. And if we don't? She shrugged, picking up a wet cloth. Then I'll do it alone. But that tells me you're willing to live in your own mess. Is that really what you want? A quiet standoff. Then Liam moved first, picking up a paintbrush, dripping with blue. Lucas followed more slowly, grabbing a roll of paper towels. Ariel didn't smile in triumph. She simply knelt and began scrubbing a red stain from the base of the stairs, as though it were the most natural thing in the world. 2 boys, who had only ever pushed people away, now stepping toward her. No speeches, no dramatics, just a small choice. But small cracks can shatter the tallest walls. The cleanup wasn't quick. Paint had dried stubbornly into the floor. Paper towels tore apart, and toys seemed to multiply every time one was picked up. Ariel never hurried them, never complained. She let the boys mutter to each other, their childish grumbling becoming the quiet background rhythm of the room. Then, unexpectedly, Lucas let out a laugh, not from joy, but because his paintbrush slipped, smearing blue across Liam's hand. Liam pretended to be angry, then deliberately dabbed a streak of red across his brother's nose. Ariel didn't intervene. She just kept scrubbing, softly humming a tune with no name. Lucas laughed again, this time lighter, unguarded. Liam gave a small chuckle, as if afraid that too much of it might break something fragile inside. From the doorway, Nathan stood frozen. He hadn't heard that sound in months. The sound reached somewhere in him he thought had died with Catherine. Ariel never looked his way. She just wiped the last smear of paint, stood, and dusted her hands. All right, not perfect, but cleaner than before. No praise, no reward, just the tone of a teammate acknowledging a job done. A CEO, used to commanding hundreds, now standing still because a stranger had just made his sons laugh without spending a dime. When the grandfather clock struck 12, Ariel walked into the kitchen and pulled a plastic container from her bag. Toasted bread, thick with butter, sprinkled lightly with garlic salt, the kind she'd learned from her grandmother. She set 2 plates on the counter, No invitation, no coaxing. Liam frowned. I don't eat strange food. Good, Ariel replied, taking a bite of hers. More for me. Lucas leaned forward. Is that grilled cheese? Ariel didn't answer. She just slid the plate toward him. Lucas hesitated, then took a bite, chewing slowly. Not bad, he mumbled, before reaching for the other half. Liam lingered a moment before trying his. Not as good as Mom's, he muttered under his breath. Ariel nodded, her voice even. It probably never will be, and that's okay. From a distance, Nathan heard it, a quiet promise wrapped in those words. She wasn't here to replace Catherine. She was here to exist alongside her memory. An unspoken truth settled in the air. Some losses can never be filled, and honoring that may be the first step toward healing. Part 2. A lunch of honesty. The Whitmore kitchen was nearly the size of a small apartment, glowing under the soft gold of overhead lights. The marble countertops shone like mirrors, every utensil, every jar perfectly placed, but the order was so precise. It felt stripped of the warmth of real family meals. When Ariel stepped inside, the grandfather clock in the hall struck 12. She opened her bag and pulled out a square plastic container, a thin veil of warmth still clinging to its lid. The faint crinkle of plastic was soft, but in that silent kitchen, it might as well have been a bell. The scent spilled out hot butter, garlic salt, and rich, melting cheese blending with the yeasty aroma of freshly toasted bread. Lucas came in first, curious as a cat catching the scent of milk. Liam followed more slowly, eyes wary, as if any unfamiliar food might be a trap. Nathan wasn't there. His voice drifted faintly from the study. Clipped and decisive in some online meeting, Ariel set the container on the counter and spoke gently. Grilled cheese sandwiches. Made them this morning. Lucas squinted. What store are they from? None, Ariel said, with a small shake of her head. My grandmother taught me. Liam stood with arms crossed. I don't eat strange food. Ariel only smiled faintly, tore off a corner of bread, and took a bite herself. Good. More for me. Emotional beat. No arguing. No coaxing. Ariel left the choice in their hands, a rare respect for children who'd lost the power to choose in far too many parts of their lives. If it were you, would you react differently when someone respects your choice instead of trying to force it? It was Lucas who broke the silence first. Is it really grilled cheese? Ariel didn't answer. She simply turned the plate and nudged it toward him. Lucas hesitated, then took a small bite. He chewed slowly, eyes dropping to the floor as if debating whether to swallow. A moment later, he did, murmuring, Not bad. Liam shot his brother a look before quietly taking his share. After the first bite, he muttered, Not as good as Mom's. The air could have dipped heavy, but Ariel only nodded. It probably never will be, and that's okay. Lucas looked up, caught off guard by the answer. Liam said nothing, but the tension in his gaze eased. Ariel hadn't denied their truth, and she hadn't compared herself to their mother. She acknowledged it and honored it. For two boys guarding their memories of Catherine like the last treasure they owned, it will never be the same, was the password they needed to allow someone new to step into their world. The presence that didn't announce itself. Minutes later, Ariel cleared the plates. She didn't ask, was it good? She didn't make them say, thank you. She simply set a napkin on the table. Wipe your hands. Butter gets slippery. Lucas took one. Liam fidgeted with the corner of his butt, didn't use it right away. Neither noticed the small handwriting at the napkin's edge. You don't have to like it, but you'll never have to eat alone in this kitchen. Ariel didn't point it out. She didn't explain. She just left it there, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. From the sink, she caught in the corner of her eye Lucas folding the napkin neatly and slipping it into his pocket. Liam left his on the table but didn't crumple it. a small gesture, but one that said he hadn't completely rejected it. Sometimes, the quietest messages offered without pressure reach the deepest. Nathan, listening behind the door. Nathan hadn't planned to eat lunch with them. His intention was to wait until Ariel left the kitchen before coming down for coffee. But halfway down the hall, he stopped. He heard his son mention Catherine. He heard Ariel say, "It will never be the same." And that's okay. He heard the scrape of a chair, the soft rustle of a napkin, and something stirred in him, not jealousy, not relief, but a recognition, a realization that Ariel's presence hadn't erased Catherine's memory. She was quietly weaving a softer thread into a torn family tapestry. He turned back toward his office, but his steps were slower now. For the first time in a long while, he wanted to hear the clink of dishes. He wanted to catch the scent of butter drifting down the hall. He wanted to know that somewhere below, the kitchen wasn't just a room for cooking anymore. It was becoming a place where his sons weren't alone. A man who had feared opening his heart was now standing outside that kitchen, realizing that maybe silence wasn't always the enemy. Sometimes it was the soil where love could take root. Part 3. The toy sorting game. Late afternoon sunlight slipped through the cream silk curtains, spilling golden stripes across the polished wood floor. The living room had survived a morning of paint battle cleanup, but traces of chaos still lingered. Toy cars wedged under the sofa, stuffed animals buried in pillows, a Lego fortress halfway built in the corner. Ariel stood in the center, hands on her hips, like an architect about to redesign the space. Liam lay sprawled on the rug, chewing gum, staring at the ceiling as if bored by the very air. Lucas was deep in his Lego fortress, oblivious to the mess around him. She didn't bark, "Clean up now," the way most people would. Instead, she walked to the bookshelf, pulled down 3 large wicker baskets, and set them on the rug. "Today," she announced, "we're going to play a game called The Secret Stash." Lucas looked up. "What's that?" Ariel gave a conspiratorial smile. "Simples. Whoever sorts their toys into the right basket, the best, gets to pick the music for dinner tonight." Emotional beat. Instead of turning cleanup into punishment, Ariel turned it into a challenge, a game. She gave the boys a sense of choice and control, something they hadn't felt in far too long. Do you think kids would cooperate more if chores felt like a game? Share your thoughts. The 3 baskets. With a marker, Ariel labeled slips of paper and taped them to each basket. Heroes and villains action figures, robots, movie characters, builders and creators Lego, wooden blocks, play tools, noise and nuisance drums, whistles, toys that make noise. Liam smirked. "Why is the last one called nuisance?" "Because," Ariel shrugged, "it gives grown-ups headaches." Lucas burst out laughing first, a short, almost shy sound. But Ariel caught it instantly. She picked up a toy dinosaur. "Which basket does this go in?" Noise. Lucas shouted, "Wrong." Liam cut in. "It's a villain." Ariel shook her head. "You're both wrong. It goes in nuisance because it roars when you press the button." The boys glanced at each other, then cracked up. This wasn't laughter from a silly joke. It was the sound of feeling safe enough to argue, safe enough to play. A small, precious sign of healing. The battle of the secret stash. The game began. Liam hauled an army of superheroes into the heroes and villains basket. Lucas swept up Lego bricks like they were gold. Ariel played referee and keeper of the treasure, tossing them curveballs like a Batman whistle or a robot that played music. "This one hero or nuisance?" Ariel asked, holding it out to Lucas. Lucas hesitated. "Nuisance." "Wrong." Liam jumped in. They wrestled over it, laughing so hard they fell onto the rug. Ariel didn't stop them. She just stood with her arms folded. the satisfied judge of two contestants who were finally having fun. Upstairs, Nathan heard the laughter drift upward. He stopped typing mid-email, stepped into the hall, and looked down over the railing. What he saw froze him. His sons, laughing for real. Not the polite, awkward smiles they sometimes gave visitors, but laughter from deep inside. To Nathan, it felt like the first sunlight after a long winter warm, but also aching because he realized how much he'd missed it. The winners and the lesson. By the time the clock struck 5, the room was nearly spotless. Each wicker basket was filled and neatly sorted. Ariel declared, "The winner today is both of you." "That's not fair," Liam protested. "It is fair," she said, "because you both played hard and you helped this room breathe again." Lucas grinned. Liam's lips twitched into the hint of a smile. Ariel handed them the remote for the speaker. "Pick the dinner music." Lucas chose a light jazz track. Liam started to argue, but after a few bars, he went quiet and sank into the sofa. From the hallway, Nathan came down slowly. He didn't interrupt, just watched Ariel sitting between his boys. The warm glow of sunset brushing her face. She looked like she'd always belonged there. No one won, no one lost, but the house had gained a shared heartbeat. Part 4. The piano moment. The door left ajar. The piano room sat tucked into the east wing of the Whitmore estate, where the last light of day poured through sheer cream curtains, spilling soft gold across the polished wooden floor. In the center stood a white grand piano, still and silent, wearing a fine layer of dust, more display piece than instrument, untouched for far too long. On top of it sat a faded family photograph. Catherine, in a pale blue silk dress, her hair loose and soft, smiling toward two little boys wearing paper birthday hats. Nathan, younger in the picture, had one arm around her, his gaze warmer than any chandelier in the house. Ariel hadn't meant to stop. She was just passing by when the sunlight hit the piano keys, flashing a clean white that pulled at something deep inside her. She eased the door open and stepped in. Her hand brushed the cool surface. Fine dust clung to her fingertips. She exhaled slowly, as if afraid to disturb the fragile air. From the doorway, Lucas appeared silent, his eyes fixed not on Ariel, but on the piano. His voice was low, almost a confession. "Mom used to play that." It was as if those words had unlocked a door that had been sealed shut for years. Only this time, the key was in the hands of a stranger. Keys that unlock memories. Ariel sat at the bench, but didn't start right away. She rested her hands on her lap, took a breath, then pressed a single white key. The sound was clear, round, and soft, fading quickly into the stillness. Another note, then another hesitant, not yet forming a melody. Lucas stepped closer, stopping beside her. He didn't ask if she knew how to play. He just watched. Then, almost without thinking, Ariel found a simple progression of chords, slow and unpolished, weaving themselves into a melody as gentle as a lullaby. Lucas froze, tilting his head, eyes wide. Mom played that before bed. Ariel paused for a heartbeat, then kept playing, her voice low, almost speaking to the music itself. "I didn't know. It just felt right." Lucas said nothing more. He pulled over a small chair, sat beside her, and placed his tiny hands on the keys, adding 2 tentative notes to finish the phrase. Ariel glanced at him, nodded softly, and together, they started from the beginning. 2 people, one holding the memory, the other stumbling upon it, by instinct reweaving an old melody into something alive again. The man outside the door, on his way to the dining room, Nathan heard the piano. Without thinking, his steps shifted toward the east wing. From the hallway, through the barely open door, he saw Ariel and Lucas sitting close, not in a way that erased distance, but in a way that warmed the space between them. Ariel's hands moved slowly across the keys, nothing flashy or technical, just notes, with weight and feeling. Lucas followed along, his expression softer than Nathan had seen in months. No furrowed brow, no guarded look. Nathan had never thought he'd hear that song again in this house. Catherine had played it countless times when the boys were sick, when he came home late, on winter nights, when all four of them sat together in the glow of the fire. Music had once been the lifeblood of this home until it disappeared with her. He wanted to step in, but something in him knew this was too delicate to touch. So he stood still, hand on the doorframe, eyes fixed on Ariel's fingers. Some moments are so rare, so fragile. You don't dare interrupt, for fear they'll vanish like smoke, an ending that isn't one. When the last note faded, Lucas looked up. "Do you think Mom would be mad?" Ariel shook her head, her voice sure but soft. "No, I think she'd be happy because someone remembered." Lucas didn't answer, but the corners of his mouth lifted just enough to be noticed. He got up, started to leave, then paused in the doorway. "Tomorrow, will you teach me?" Ariel gave a small nod. When he was gone, she stayed on the bench, her hands resting on the keys, as if trying to hold on to the warmth of what had just happened. That was when Nathan finally stepped in, slow and quiet. "Where'd you learn?" he asked. Ariel smiled faintly, her gaze still on the keys. "I didn't. I just felt like I should play." Nathan studied her for a long moment, and in that silence, he realized sometimes, to touch a wound, you don't need skill, just the instinct that it's the right time. A man who had once believed everything had to be planned to succeed was now standing in front of proof that some of the most beautiful things happen by chance. Part 5. The Green Sweater. The playroom was unusually quiet that night. Tiny LED lights in the ceiling twinkled like a small, man-made sky, casting a soft golden haze over the bookshelves, Lego bins, and the art corner. Beside the toy rack sat a navy beanbag, its surface slightly sunken from hours of use. Lucas sat there, curled around a sea-green sweater, worn thin with time, the sleeves hanging past his small hands. His gaze wasn't fixed on anything, just on the loose threads, as if counting each stitch. A faint scent clung to the fabric lavender perfume, mixed with the gentle clean of old soap. It was the smell of nights when his mother sat at his bedside, reading him to sleep. Ariel stepped in and froze. She didn't need to ask. She knew instantly it belonged to Catherine. She walked toward him slowly, her steps muffled by the carpet. Instead of speaking, she lowered herself onto the floor beside him, keeping a respectful distance just outside the borders of his safe zone. Not all comfort begins with words sometimes. Silent presence says the most. The quiet warmth. Lucas's shoulders tensed when she sat down, but he didn't pull away. He kept running his fingers over the collar of the sweater, as though letting go might make the memory fade. Ariel rested her hands on her knees, not touching him, leaning just enough so their backs were parallel. Time seemed to slow. The ticking of the wall clock, the faint rush of water from the kitchen sink. The room became a cocoon, holding them in the same rhythm of breath. Ariel could feel it, his deep inhale, his long exhale, the breathing of a child trying to hold himself steady. Then, so quietly she almost missed it, Lucas spoke. "I'm scared. If I don't hold it, I'll forget what she smelled like." Ariel turned her head, her voice calm and even. "I think a scent might fade, but the things your mom did for you, those never go away." Lucas stayed silent, but his eyes shifted toward her. Ariel still didn't reach out. That restraint was deliberate. She wanted him to feel that this space and this memory were his to protect. Acknowledging someone's fear doesn't erase it, but it tells them they don't have to face it alone. Nathan, outside the door. Again, Nathan had just ended a late-night international call when he noticed the warm light spilling from the playroom. He meant to tell Lucas it was bedtime, but as he approached, he stopped. Through the half-open door, he saw Ariel sitting beside his son, neither speaking. Both settled into a quiet safety. The green sweater in Lucas's hands was like a thin lifeline, stretching between past and present. Ariel didn't try to take it from him, didn't tell him to put it away, didn't make false promises that everything will be okay, like others before her. Nathan remembered himself months ago, clutching his father's jacket after the funeral, just to hold on to the cologne that meant home. He'd never told anyone, and now, seeing Lucas and Ariel, he realized she was doing something he never could, sitting with the pain instead of trying to outrun it. When you watch someone face the grief of someone you love with patience, with respect, it stirs your heart in ways you can't predict. The moment to keep or let go. After a long while, Lucas set the sweater on his lap, still keeping his arms around it protectively. He turned to Ariel. "Have you ever forgotten someone?" She thought for a moment before answering. "I once thought I would, but no. I just learned how to remember them without it hurting so much." Lucas bit his lip, staring at nothing for a beat. Then, slowly, he began folding the sweater. It wasn't perfect. The corners were uneven, but it was deliberate, as if he wanted to care for it rather than cling to it in desperation. Ariel didn't praise him, didn't encourage him. She simply stood, crossed to a small cabinet, and opened the bottom drawer. From it, she lifted an empty wooden box and set it on the table. "When you're ready, we can put it in here, and if you're not ready, you can keep it with you." Lucas nodded without a word, but as Ariel turned away, she caught him pulling the sweater close again, this time, holding it gently, not as a life raft, but as a memory. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means learning to hold on without letting it pull you under. Part 6. Facing Judgment. The old Charleston Hotel glowed like a crystal palace on the riverbank. The grand lobby was dressed in wine-red carpet, walnut-paneled walls polished to a mirror sheen, and a vaulted ceiling from which 3 cascading Swarovski chandeliers spilled down like waterfalls of light. Round tables draped in ivory satin lined the ballroom, each crowned with slender vases of white orchids. Laughter mingled with the delicate clink of glasses. A string quartet played a waltz, just refined enough to impress, just distant enough to keep people apart. Nathan Whitmore entered in a flawless black tuxedo, his bow tie perfectly tied. There was something in his walk, steady, measured, the calm command of a man who could own a room without saying a word. Beside him walked Ariel Carter in a midnight silk gown, the lines modest but elegant, her hair swept into a low chignon, pearl earrings catching the light. She didn't try to blend in. She simply stood tall, breathed evenly, and walked through the undercurrent of appraising glances as if they were nothing more than a cold draft. The twins had been allowed to stay through dessert. Tonight, they looked like little gentlemen in gray vests and blue bow ties. From across the room, Ariel caught sight of them, whispering about the chocolate mousse, their mouths ringed with whipped cream, their eyes alight with the rare sparkle of uncomplicated joy. But the glances began, the murmurs followed, the smiles laced in velvet and barbed with something sharper. She's the one. Whitmore changes his taste fast. The help sitting at the table, Ariel heard them. She'd heard versions of it all her life. The words changed. The meaning never did. Her fingertips rested lightly on the table, tapping one slow, steady beat against the porcelain rim. A private reminder: calm isn't surrender, it's strength. When the MC invited Nathan to speak about the foundation's work with children who had lost a parent. Ariel looked up. On stage, his words were simple, unpolished, but carried weight, speaking of those who remain like anchors in a storm, for reasons she couldn't name. The words softened the chill in her spine. Sometimes, in a room full of light, the warmest thing is a plain sentence about those who stay. The grape stain and the word help. Dessert arrived. Wine glasses shimmered. Liam gestured more than he spoke. Lucas leaned too far, his glass of grape juice tipped, spilling like a tiny purple storm. The stain spread across the carpet, splashing the hem of Mrs. Reynolds's gown at the next table. For a moment, the air froze. Ariel was on her feet before a server could react. She'd worked kitchens long enough to clean far worse. Kneeling, she dabbed at the stain, her motions quick, precise, her shoulders straight. Lucas held his breath, gripping the edge of his chair. Then it came sweet as sugar, sharp as glass. Boys will be boys. An older gentleman chuckled, but the help ought to have seen it coming. The table's laughter faltered. Some chuckled out of habit. Others looked down, ducking from the sting. Ariel didn't look at anyone. She kept blotting the stain, her hands steady, her posture unbowed. A chair scraped back. Nathan stood, not rushed, not loud, but each word landed like a seal pressed into hot wax. She's not the help. The air split clean down the middle. She's the reason my sons smile again. Those last 4 words, smile again, had a weight of their own. Lucas looked up sharply, his eyes bright with something unspoken. Liam's grip tightened on his fork. Then he set it down gently. For once, the grown-up had done what a grown-up should. The older man hesitated, his lips shaping a paper-thin apology. Mrs. Reynolds inclined her head and thanked Ariel, not in the tone of social courtesy, but genuine. Somewhere in the room, a woman placed another white napkin in Ariel's hand. The balcony and the warm breath of cold air. The evening resumed, its music steady. Ariel excused herself to the balcony. The night air off the Charleston River was laced with salt, slipping over the bare skin of her neck. The city lights gilded the old rooftops below. Inside, the string quartet softened into the background, leaving her with the sound of her own breathing. The door opened again. Nathan stepped out, keeping a distance about the length of an outstretched hand. "Tonight, I'm sorry," he said, "not for them, for the fact that this room made you hear it one more time." Ariel leaned against the stone railing, her gaze on the water. She'd learned not to turn every apology into a new wound. "I'm not fragile, Mr. Whitmore." "I know," he said evenly. "I just don't want the strong ones to have to stand alone." A breeze caught a loose strand from her bun. Nathan's hand lifted, then paused midair. Respecting the boundary, Ariel smiled faintly, tucking it back herself. They stood like that, listening to the wind and to the quiet. Somewhere inside, 2 boys were whispering to themselves how to say, "Sorry I spilled my drink." "Thank you for saying my name," Ariel said at last, her voice barely more than a ripple in the air. Nathan tilted his head. "Your name will always belong to you. No one gets to replace it with a label. Not a touch, not an embrace. Just 2 people in the night, recognizing the weight each carried and choosing not to take it away, but to stand beside it. Some intimacy doesn't need contact. Sometimes the warmest gesture is the hand that stops out of respect. Back into the light, and a name that can't be misunderstood. When they returned, the charity auction was underway. The MC invited donors to present their contributions. Nathan was called again. He stepped onto the stage, calm as ever, but with a new undertone in his voice. The resonance of someone who had made a decision. "I'd like to introduce my guest tonight," he began, and heads turned. "Ariel Carter, my family's housekeeper, the person I trust most with the most valuable thing I have my 2 sons. Ariel wasn't used to stages. Her heartbeat thudded like a small drum in her chest. But she lifted her chin. The room wasn't noisy. It simply shifted, like a painting changing color. From the side of the stage, Liam and Lucas suddenly appeared. They'd snuck out, convinced they needed to protect her. Lucas tugged at the hem of her gown, whispering, "Don't worry, I'm here." Nathan caught it. A rare smile ghosted across his face, meant only for this moment. He continued, "Tonight, we're giving more than money. We're giving the truth. Children don't need a bigger house. They need someone who stays." The word "stays" landed like the refrain of a song the room already knew. Mrs. Reynolds, still marked faintly with a purple stain, was the first to clap. One beat, then another. Then the whole table joined in. Ariel bowed her head slightly, not in thanks to a savior, but in greeting to herself, to the woman who had weathered storms, and now, under crystal light, was finally called by her real name. A public introduction, clear, unapologetic, placed her where she belonged, inside the circle of trust. Tomorrow, the whispers might start again. But tonight, the story had been told by the one person with the right to tell it. When someone places you beside what they love most and says your name without hesitation, that's a promise. Even without a ring, the ride home, it was late. The car rolled beneath the canopy of blackened trees. In the back seat, the boys slept against each other like two halves of the same answer. Ariel glanced at the window, her reflection overlaying the city lights sliding past. She wasn't dreaming, just at peace. Tomorrow would still bring breakfast, dishes, homework, and practicing old melodies. But something had shifted. Her name now stood tall in that house. Nathan drove, his hands steady on the wheel, as if keeping time to an unfinished song. He didn't say thank you again. He only turned the radio down, leaving a soft, shared quiet, where each could hear the rhythm of their own heart and of the people sitting beside them. Part 7. A birthday without cake. Charleston's morning was soft as a warm cotton blanket. Pale gold sunlight slipping through sheer white curtains, scattering gentle patches of light across the polished wood floor. But in the small breakfast room of the Whitmore estate, the air felt like a song cut short. Lucas sat at the table, turning an empty glass in his hands. Liam doodled aimlessly on a napkin. From the study, Nathan's low, urgent voice carried through the open door as he spoke on the phone. On the table, the usual breakfast toast, fried eggs, orange juice, no flowers, no balloons, no cake. Today was Lucas's birthday. He knew it. Liam knew it. Nathan knew it. But ever since their mother passed, the day had gone unspoken. Too many memories bound to round cakes, flickering candles, and a song that now lived only inside their heads. Ariel stepped in, wearing a beige sweater, her hair tied neatly back, a small paper box in her hands, wrapped with a sky blue ribbon. She didn't ask why there was no celebration, or if he felt sad. Some grief didn't need to be dug up. It just needed to be given a different shape. She set the box in front of Lucas. "For you." Lucas looked up, frowning slightly, as if afraid she might be teasing. "But today's a special day," she said, "and gifts don't need cake to be given." In the golden morning light, that small box sat between them like a bridge laid across 3 years of silence. Some special days don't need fireworks. Only someone who remembers and walks toward you. The frame and the memory. Lucas lifted the lid. Inside was a round-edged walnut frame, small enough for his hands to hold. Inside it, a child's drawing, but painted with care. It showed Lucas beside his mother, the two of them painting together at the kitchen table. On the wall behind them was a vase of yellow daisies, a detail Ariel had only learned from a story Liam told one breezy afternoon. How do you have this? Lucas's voice was a whisper, as if speaking too loud might break it. Liam found the original in your mom's box, Ariel said softly. I just put it in a frame, so you can keep it somewhere. You'll see every day. Lucas was quiet. His eyes traced every part of the drawing, from his mother's hand holding his, to the green streaks of paint, to the soft brown hair falling over her cheek. He touched the drawn outline of her face with a fingertip, gently, as though the image might vanish if pressed too hard. His 8-year-old eyes brimmed red, but his lips curved into the smallest, truest smile, as if a piece of memory he thought was lost had just been returned. When a painful memory is given back in its most beautiful form, it no longer knocks you down. It becomes a place you want to return to. The eyes, watching from afar. Nathan stood at the doorway. No one knew how long he'd been there. His gaze rested on the frame, then on Lucas's face. For a rare moment, the carefully guarded expression of the CEO cracked, revealing the tenderness he kept hidden behind meetings, contracts, and glittering social nights. He didn't step in with thanks or platitudes. He just watched as Ariel placed a steadying hand on Lucas's shoulder, a touch light as a feather, yet enough to keep a boy steady while he turned an old page. Lucas looked over at him. Dad, I'm gonna hang it by my bed so Mom can watch me sleep. Nathan nodded, his voice rough. Yeah, so she can watch you sleep. It was the first time in years Nathan had spoken about his wife in front of the boys without sidestepping her name. Sometimes, a gift to one person ends up being a gift to the whole family. The last moment of the day. That night, the small bedroom glowed with the amber light of a bedside lamp. Lucas was asleep, the frame propped neatly on his nightstand. Liam lay beside him, one hand resting on the frame's edge, as if to make sure it would still be there in the morning. Ariel stood at the doorway, watching them breathe in sync. Nathan stepped up beside her, stopping at the distance of a shared breath. Thank you, he murmured this time, just for her. She shook her head. No need. Your son just needs to know. Beautiful things don't disappear. They just move, waiting to be found again. Nathan looked at her, longer than politeness required. There was something in his eyes, not the gaze of a CEO, but of a man who had just watched an empty space in his home fill in. Not with power or wealth, but with gentleness, no confessions, no promises, just the silent acknowledgement that Ariel had reached a place he himself had been too afraid to touch. Some people don't come to replace what you've lost. They come to give back what you thought was gone forever. Part 8. The real mom question. Lucas's bedroom was bathed in the soft gold glow of a bedside lamp. Glow-in-the-dark stars clung faintly to the wall, faded now, like the memories he tried so hard to hold on to. He lay on his side, the blanket pulled to his shoulders, brown hair spilling across one cheek. Ariel sat at the edge of his bed, reading aloud, her gaze lifting every so often, just to make sure he was still awake. The room was so quiet she could hear the faint whistle of wind against the closed window. Out in the hallway, all was still. Nathan was likely still in his study. Liam had been asleep for a while. Ariel closed the book and was about to wish him good night when Lucas rolled over, eyes wider than usual. Miss Ariel. His voice was soft, as if it might shatter in the air. If you were my real mom, would you love me like she did? Ariel froze. This wasn't in any childcare manual. It wasn't a question she'd ever imagined she'd hear on an ordinary night. She saw not just curiosity in his eyes, but something heavier worry, as though her answer might change something that mattered deeply. She took a slow breath, resting her hand on the blanket, not on him. just close enough to be a quiet reassurance. Lucas, I'm not your mom, and I'll never be able to replace her, but I can promise you one thing: I'll stay. For as long as you want me to. Lucas bit his lip, eyes glistening. Stay for how long? As long as you still need someone beside you, whether you're 10 or 20 or 50. Ariel smiled gently, though something deeper flickered in her own gaze. He was silent for a moment, then slowly shifted closer. For the first time, Lucas let her pull the blanket snug around him, his small hand brushing against her wrist. Don't go anywhere. Okay. Ariel bent down and kissed his forehead. I won't go unless you tell me to. Lucas smiled faintly, the kind of tired but warm smile that comes when a weight is lifted. He rolled over, hugging his pillow, and within minutes, his breathing had evened out. Ariel sat there a moment longer, watching the small shape of him under the light. In that moment, she knew she wasn't just an employee anymore. She was part of this family in a way no paperwork or bloodline could prove. When she slipped out, she closed the door quietly. Nathan was standing at the far end of the hall, hands in his pockets, eyes raw with something unspoken. They didn't say a word, just held a long look. It was enough for Ariel to know he'd heard her answer, and enough for Nathan to know that, for Lucas, she wasn't just staying. She'd been chosen. Part 9. Facing the Threat. A midday message. Sunlight streamed through the Whitmore kitchen's tall windows, turning the marble countertop into a mirror of warm light. Ariel stood at the counter, peeling apples with careful precision for Lucas and Liam's lunch dessert. The room was quiet, save for the soft rhythm of the knife and the faint lavender scent from the vase on the windowsill. A ping broke the stillness. She wiped her hands, picked up her phone. An unknown number. 4 words, clean and cold as steel. Know your place. Her eyes lingered on the message. The first feeling wasn't shock, but the cold trace running down her spine. In this world, such words were the unspoken language of power brief, unsigned, but always carrying the same meaning. You don't belong here. Ariel set the phone down and tried to resume slicing, but her hand trembled, the knife slipping slightly off its line. She'd thought she was immune to this kind of warning until it came aimed at the one place she'd begun to think of as home. Nathan's arrival. Footsteps sounded in the hallway, measured, deliberate. Nathan stepped in, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened, the residual weight of a meeting still clinging to him. His gaze swept the room, stopping at her phone on the counter. You've seen the message, he said plainly. No preamble. Ariel startled, but didn't ask how he knew. In his position, important information had a way of finding him, like water, finding its course. It's fine, she said, keeping her voice steady. I'm used to it. I just know my limits. Nathan moved closer, not quickly, but with weight. He placed his warm hand over the knife she was holding, gently taking it from her and setting it aside, as if afraid she might hurt herself in her distraction. No. Here, there's only one limit, the one I set, and I don't allow anyone even through a message to touch you. She looked up into his eyes, dark, calm, but carrying something stronger than any threat. The public claim. Nathan didn't stop at words. He stepped in closer, closing the space between them to the span of a single breath. Then he reached for her hand, not loosely, but firmly, as if making a declaration to someone unseen beyond the kitchen walls. Ariel, he said, each word like a nail driven into wood. You don't need to know your place the way they mean it. You just need to know when you're here. You're beside me, and I will protect that. His grip was warm, steady, unshakable. Ariel wanted to say something, but the words caught in her throat. All her life, she'd been told, don't draw attention. Stay in your lane. This was the first time someone had said, you're in the right place right here, beside me. A promise without retreat. The moment held until a sound drifted in from the garden. Nathan still hadn't let go. He met her eyes, his voice lower now, but even more certain. I don't care who sent it. I just want them to understand if they threaten you. They threaten me, and I don't back down. Ariel shook her head slightly, torn between gratitude and worry. But you're the CEO. You don't have to. I'm the man who won't let someone I care about get hurt. Nathan cut in, and that matters more than any title. She looked at him, and for the first time, she believed she didn't have to face the oncoming storm alone. The message was still on her phone, but its weight had vanished, replaced by the solid weight of the hand holding hers. A hand that would not let go, would not tremble, and certainly would not be pried away. Part 10. Stepping into the light. The Whitmore estate's main staircase curved gracefully upward, its polished oak banister catching the warm glow of the crystal chandelier. On the landing, an entire wall was devoted to family photographs, a frozen gallery of the Whitmore story. But since Emily's passing, Nathan's late wife, the wall had stopped changing. The colors in the frames were still bright, but the air around them was heavy, as if no one dared disturb that pause in time. Beneath them, on a small wooden stand, sat a glass case, holding the sea green sweater Lucas still clutched every night, the last thing that carried his mother's gentle scent. Ariel stood at the base of the stairs, eyes on the wall. Beside her, Lucas gripped her hand tightly, his gaze flickering between curiosity and uncertainty. Nathan stood just behind them, one hand resting on his son's shoulder, the other holding a new frame, the new photograph. Inside the frame was a crisp autumn afternoon Lucas, Liam, Nathan, and Ariel sitting together on the front porch steps. Lucas was grinning, holding a wooden ship model. Liam was leaning against Ariel's shoulder. Nathan's arm rested casually behind her, his expression more at ease than it had been in years. Nathan stepped up a few stairs, stopping beside the empty space next to the glass case. I think, he said, his voice low but warm, it's time this wall had another story to tell. Lucas looked up, voice small. Will this replace Mom's picture? Ariel knelt to meet his eyes. Her voice was soft, like a breeze through an open window. No, Lucas, your mom will always be here. I just want you to have another corner to remember memories we're making right now. He looked at the photo, then at the green sweater, a long silence, then a small nod. Placing the frame, Nathan handed the photo to Ariel. As she climbed, each step felt like walking through layers of time past heavy with shadows, toward a present slowly filling with light. She set the frame into the empty space beside the sweater. The chandelier's light caught on the glass, making it shimmer. The green sweater remained unmoved, silent witness to the past. Beside it, the new photo whispered a simple truth. Life goes on. Lucas stepped forward, his small hand brushing the edge of the frame, then sliding over to rest against the sweater's glass. Now, Mom will see I'm okay, he murmured, almost to himself. Ariel bit her lip, but Nathan, standing close, quietly squeezed her hand, a promise to continue. As they stepped back together, the two mementos stood side by side, one a thread to an irreplaceable past, the other the growing roots of the present. Nathan looked at Ariel, his voice rich with meaning. Thank you for not trying to replace, but choosing to continue. I never thought I could replace anyone, she replied softly. I just want Lucas and Liam to know love doesn't disappear. It just finds a new way to stay. Lucas wrapped his arms around her in a small but steady hug. In that embrace, Ariel knew families aren't just made of blood. They're built from the days we stay, the meals we share, and the new pictures we place beside the old. The chandelier's glow bathed all three of them, as if sealing the promise of that day in warm light. An afternoon at home. That weekend, the Whitmore house no longer echoed with the lonely whistle of wind down empty halls. Golden sunlight slanted through the tall windows, spilling across the polished floor where Ariel sat in the living room. Flanked by Lucas and Liam, they laughed as they built a bridge from wooden blocks, then tore it down just to build it again. In the corner, the black piano stood open. Without warning, Ariel moved from play to music, her fingers coaxing out a soft lullaby. The boys' laughter weaving into the melody like improvised notes. Nathan leaned against the doorway, hands in his pockets, watching quietly. The tension of the CEO's world was gone from his face. In its place was a rare, grounding peace, the kind that comes from knowing that after all the storms, this family had found its way back to each other. He looked at Ariel, then at his sons, and realized the cracks he thought could never be repaired had become the most beautiful lines binding them together with the invisible glue called staying. The lullaby ended on a warm, deep chord. Lucas turned, calling, "Dad, come here." Nathan stepped forward, kneeling, pulling all three into one large embrace. Inside that circle, there was no space for loss, only love, chosen each day, no matter the past. Family isn't just blood. The moment seemed to say, it's the people who stay, no matter the storm. On the windowsill, sunlight lit the new photo beside the green sweater. Two moments from different times, telling the same truth. Love may change its shape, but it never disappears. Do you believe that one person staying can change an entire family? Share your story in the comments. And if this one touched your heart, leave a score from 0 to 10. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss the next story.